All right,
Awesome.
Dr. K. I do want to say at the beginning of the recording, if it says blockchain, we are not a blockchain company. The title's incorrect. I want that to be very clear on record as well. My name is Dr. K. I have been studying digital misogynoir, online gender-based violence, and race in the internet for the past 12 years. My focus in my research has always been about how do we create harm reduction online to mitigate these forms of harm that impact Black women, non-binary, and gender expansive people. Over the last decade plus, I've done a lot of research, interviews, I've experienced digital massage noir, and I've been in a lot of different communities and did a lot of writing, a lot of like research and stuff. And one of the things that always stood out to me was that it felt almost impossible to have this type of mitigation, harm reduction, content moderation on social media because of the way that centralized social media is set up. To my surprise, I came across Blacksky in 2024. I immediately contacted Rudy and was like, hey, I need to chat with you, and told him about my work and that I really wanted to be not only an academic, but also a practitioner, which was important to me. And I asked to start doing content moderation. So that's how I began my journey with Blacksky. And over the last, it'll be 2 years in November, which is wild to say. My role has shifted to being a community safety and support steward, which allows me to not only work closely with the moderators and our trust and safety lead on policy, content moderations, and label. I also um, am able to speak like I'm doing now, provide education, and work closely with a lot of our community members and folks that are using our products. And for those that don't know the definition of digital massage noir is the anti-Black racism and sexism that Black women, non-binary, and gender expansive people experience. And over the past, I want to say mainly the past like 4 years, a lot of research has gone into trying to not only to like quantify it because a lot of people in the academic space do not understand that the qualitative data for this is far more important than quantitative. Glitch UK in 2022 did a report. They're based across the pond where they actually looked at how much digital massage noir was happening on particular platforms, and their data showed that Black women are more likely to experience 40% more harm than white women online, and that they had over 9,000 more harmful messages towards Black women than white women. So that's just kind of to give you a little bit of context that like this is not something new or made up. This is like actually happening, and it really influences the work that I do at Black Sky and really how we move as a company. So I want to start with an Audre Lorde quote. I switched it out from a quote that I usually use because I felt like this quote speaks more to what I'll be talking about today, which is about how we do our moderation, not only as a team, but also as a community. And then also what we have recently introduced to the community to give them more autonomy and access to creating their own ways of governing and protecting their communities. So the quote is without community, there's no liberation. And I fully believe in that because um, a lot of trust and safety has been extremely inundated with the biases and racism and isms of like white tech bros. And I think that that causes a big issue in who is protected online and whose actual forms of harm are seen as legitimate. And I think that what's very unique about Black Sky is that we really focus on the needs of the community, and also that by focusing on the needs of the community, it allows us to really understand what does it look like to moderate, right? And not to censor people, but to create an environment where the internet may not be the safest space, it never will be, but we are creating the tools for us to be able to mitigate the harm to make it a little bit more enjoyable for folks. So back when I started in 2024, Black Sky had a feed and they were rolling out and starting their Black Sky moderation. This is what the old page used to look like. And at that time, there were two labels. It was misogynoir and anti-black harassment. And we've always had a small team of moderators, but the team was extremely small at that time. And what I really enjoyed about learning about Black Sky is that Rudy saw that there was a need within the community due to instances that were happening on the protocol. And he answered that call, right? And because of that, other community members were very advantageous of jumping in and wanting to support in a particular way. Over the past 2 years, I will say, we've, got new branding. We have a larger team now, still a small team, but a larger team. And our trust and safety has become even more robust based on the early adopters of this particular moderation tool and also based on the moderators that started out. And fun fact, two of us that started out as moderators are a part of the main team now, our trust and safety lead and myself. So when we say we walk it like we talk it, we mean it. Like Rudy was in the moderation, like everyone on our team has a very clear view of what it looks like to moderate and also what it looks like to have to build out the trust and safety policies, right? Um, so as I began moderating, I noticed that we needed more labels, right? As stuff was coming in, I was like, oh, we need some more specific labels because those two labels in particular, they did cover a lot, but there were certain instances where we came up across like anti-Black rhetoric that was internalized anti-Blackness, and it wasn't really harassment, right? It may have been like a blanket statement that someone was making. We also wanted to make sure that we had something for violence because we noticed that there were a lot of reports coming in of people posting very violent images in regards to Black people, doxing, of course, non-consensual intimate images. And then synthetic media is something that was really important to us because we saw how AI was being used to create misinformation, specifically around Black women. And one of the things that stood out to myself is that when they were trying to roll back SNAP benefits, there were a lot of people on TikTok in particular using AI to create these very sensational videos of Black women yelling about not being able to use their food stamps, and they have all these kids in the background, right? And these videos were circulating. And of course, those videos, what are making it to the skyline, and people are reporting them. And we wanted to make sure that we could cover synthetic media that is not just someone using AI to create strange and unusual photos, right? But also spreading misinformation, especially when it comes to the Black community. And then, of course, white supremacy and anti-Black rhetoric was important because with anti-Black harassment, especially with the term harassment, it does need to be like a back and forth, right? Or you constantly trying to engage with someone. But there were instances where people would just say blanket statements, right? They would just say something extremely wild and it wasn't directed at a particular person, but it was still rooted in white supremacy and anti-Black rhetoric. So I came up with these labels. I discussed it with our trust and safety lead and Rudy, and then, and I'll talk about this later. I presented them to the community so they could have insight and weigh in on the labels. And down here, I'm about to sneeze. Give me 1 second. Oh, how do I mute myself? I don't want to sneeze on camera. I'm back. I don't know what I look like when I sneeze, and to be honest, like I can't be seen ugly on any recorded thing. Like, absolutely not. So at the bottom, you will see right here, this is what the labels look like if your content is labeled, right? So it'll say like what your content has been labeled as, and if you are a repeat offender, you will get that label on your account. And every label, yes, can be appealed, but this is so folks can know, what's going on with you. What's great now about Black Sky is that we do have an app view. So our moderation is built into the app view. So you no longer have to subscribe if you are on blacksky.community. But if you are using other applications, you do need to subscribe to our moderation tool in order to be able to report and also decide how you want to see the labels on those accounts. So this is like a very brief background of like how we get down at Black Sky when it comes to moderation. So we have our volunteer moderators, which are community members. And that is a very, very small team, might I add. So, when we're out here moderating, I want you all to think of us because we are really in the trenches, making sure that people are safe. We are introducing peer moderators as we roll out Black Sky only posts soon. And the peer moderator, our trust and safety lead, JD, made this beautiful diagram that I stole from him and stole from them. And it basically just shows you like what the flow will look like for when people are reporting as peer moderators. And we'll be rolling out more information and views of what that will look like in app so that the peer moderators can help moderate the Black Sky only posts to provide support for not only the moderation team but also contribute to the community. So we've had a lot of people sign up to be peer moderators, which we're really excited about. And launching this particular type of moderation program is really exciting because it gives us an opportunity to really see like how the community, right, that is using it every day, that may not be like a dedicated, volunteer moderator with a certain set of hours, moderates. And it also gives us a lot of data to think about like what new labels we may need, or if something that's being reported, it's like, oh, this is being reported a lot, but it doesn't really fall in line with what is being reported for. Why is that, right? Which is really important to our team, and especially to me as someone who's a researcher, because I think it's important for us to have a very, very like wide view of how this works, not just from tooling, but also from the community aspect, and then also from a data and research standpoint. So that way we continue to evolve and grow and also help other communities. Um, Everyone is in the Black diaspora, right? So that is also very important. Not everyone lives in America. Um, and we have folks who moderate who are from all different backgrounds, who are part of the diaspora, which is important and across all over, right? So that allows us to also be able to catch certain cultural nuances that may exist in certain places, right? So one of our team members lives in there are certain things that are being reported that I honestly do not know about. I'm going to do my due diligence and research, but they can also provide insight, or they can moderate those particular posts that may be dealing with something that's specific to their region, right? Because blackness is not a monolith, right? And I think that's also a big issue in trust and safety, is that they think that a blanket trust and safety tool and or program or approach will work for all groups, and it will not. We have an open communication feedback loop. So we have our own private conversations that we can have with the other moderators if a tricky case comes up, where we can discuss it in real time. Instead of someone just feeling like, well, I don't really know what this is, so I'm just going to put a label on it and submit it, right? So it allows folks to have open feedback and, excuse me, that communication loop. And that's also something that is accessible to the community as well through Black Sky Public Assembly, People's Assembly, which I will talk about in the next couple of slides. And then we also have accessible documentation. And before I jump into the documentation, I do want to point out a bit of the numbers. So this was back in 2025, but we were about at 50,000 moderated reports, and then we were able to label 583 as misogynoir, which is really, really groundbreaking, because as you all remember earlier, I said that like within the past 4 years or so, people have been really trying to figure out how do we prove that this is actually happening, right? Without having to maybe read books by authors like Mickey Kimball, Hood Feminism, where she's talking about the hashtag solidarity for white women, without having to think about, the hashtag Me Too being co-opted by a white woman when it was actually a movement created. Does the data look like? How can we prove that misogynoir and anti-blackness is actually happening? And how can we also prove that like there are ways to actually mitigate it, right? It's not an impossible task. So this is just a video of me going through our docs page. So one of the things that I found very important for us is to have a dedicated page that talks about our moderation, our labeler, when we have new labels and updates. And this is very similar to our internal SOP that JD worked on, where we explain to the moderators and the team internally how to moderate, what these particular rules are, how to escalate things. But we also wanted to be able to give that information to the community as well, so they can understand, like, what does a doxing label actually mean when it comes to Black people, right? What do you mean by synthetic images? I remember when we first released the new set of labels, I had a couple of folks reach out to me about what exactly is included in non-consensual intimate images, right? Because they want to make sure that if I post this particular thing, like, will I be reported, or will my account get labeled? And as the community safety and support steward, I engage frequently, all the time, with our community openly, so everyone can see those conversations, right? So this is also one of the really important tools for Blacksky and how we moderate to create a safer internet, because people the information, right? If they have questions, they can go here. If they want to figure out, like, how do I appeal something, they can go to these docs. So it gives them an opportunity to see what exactly they are not only opting into, but what their options are if they are experiencing harm or witnessing harm. And a lot of the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to things that will, like, directly impact the community, we do it through Blacksky's People Assembly, which is hooked up through Polis. And it allows any community member, right, to create a poll that anyone can interact with. So when I created these labels last year, I created the poll to where people could vote on the labels, right? There's an option to have it where people can leave comments to add to the conversation, or people can just vote on it. So I set it up to vote. I was like, do y'all think we need these extra labels or not? Like, is this something that actually matters to you all? And we were able to get feedback from folks. We got 91 people who voted, and everyone was really on board with the idea of adding these new labels, which was great because it, affirmed that what we were seeing, they were also seeing online, right? Not just us seeing it in the reports. And it also let us know that this is something that we are going to continuously have to do, is to pay attention to the community, talk to the community, see exactly, right, what labels would benefit them, what labels are being overlooked, right? And we're currently thinking around new labels to focus on fat phobia and ableism as well, because we know that those are also things that impact Black folks. And when we get certain reports, we can't always label it as just anti-Black harassment. It goes much deeper than that, right? These forms of oppression are layered, and I feel like we should be able to label it with as many labels as we need, right, in order for the point to get across that, like, you've harmed someone. Uh-oh. Okay. Over there. My screen just got bigger on my side. Okay. So now I'm going to jump into Acorn, because I know time is not with me right now. So our developer Rishi, who is also on the call, created Acorn. Originally, when we first started talking about Acorn, we were trying to find a way to make moderation more, like, seamless, and to be able to do it on an iPad, a tablet, in your phone, right? Because what we were using before, we did not have that option. We had to be at a computer, right? And that's not accessible for all of the moderators. We want moderation to be something that is easy for them. It doesn't feel like a barrier, because if it is a barrier, they are less likely to want to moderate, right? So Rishi started to build out Acorn as a way for us to be able to go in and moderate. And we were very, very intentional about building in particular wellness components, which I don't have screenshots here, but asking folks to choose how long they want to moderate or how many things they want to moderate, giving folks information for any type of, like, safety things, because one of the things that I put together when I first started moderating was just like I called it like a wellness cheat sheet, where it had, like, meditation, somatic, different activities, ways for you to take care of yourself because this work is very, very hard. And it can be very, very traumatizing for Black folks to do this work. So we wanted to make sure that this particular tooling provided almost like respite for those who are actually moderating. And we have a lot of really exciting things coming down the pike that we want to add to it, like games and stuff and music and things like that to make the experience much more I don't want to say fun because moderating is not fun. I don't ever want anyone to think that we are having a blast, but you just want to make the experience less daunting. Um, but Rishi, being the amazing person they are, decided that everyone should have Acorn. They should be able to moderate their communities. They should be able to build their communities. They should be able to take what we've created at Blacksky and govern their communities as well. And that's where the new iteration of Acorn comes in. And we are currently, we have folks can sign up for the wait list to join. We have a couple of communities that are currently being onboarded. One is a larger group of many organizations. Another is a group that has a community for Latinx folks and then also for medical people on Blacksky as well. And what's really dope about Acorn is that you are able to create your own community from the way that it looks, the colors that you use. You also have the opportunity to connect with all of the other apps on the protocol, of course. And it allows you an opportunity to invite folks to your community that are a part of your community. So there are options for you to, spin up a PDS and have your own particular handle and invite codes, right, for your community. So let's say you have an organizing community and you all do a lot of on the ground organizing, direct action, things of that nature. You can create these spaces with customizable feeds and you can give your folks different labels, right? So you could say like, this is a community organizer. This one is, helping with the direct action. You can have different labels for your group and team. So that way everyone can know who's there, right? And it allows folks to feel comfortable and safe knowing that the people that are a part of their community on Acorn are actual people that they are in community with. It also gives you the opportunity to do your own moderation. So you can attach your labeler to Acorn if you have one. You can, have your own moderation and trust and safety policies for your particular community. So Acorn is creating an opportunity for others on the atmosphere to truly build out their ideal space for their people, but also protect their people at the same time. So I'm going to close out with just a few things that are helpful when just being in trust and safety, building community, self-governance, and just making it a space where people feel like they can contribute in the ways in which harm is mitigated. So ongoing trainings, right? So we have trainings that we're constantly building and presenting to moderators, listening to community feedback. With my particular role, I would say I'm probably the one that's like tapped into the community the most. Sometimes they're like, you're really close to the community. And I'm like, yes, I see everything. So like paying attention to what the community's talking about, right? Like if we see an uptick or something, or somebody's talking about something that's happening, I know that that's probably going to lead to an influx of reports. I will immediately contact JD or the moderator and say, hey, this is currently happening on the skyline. You may see an uptick of reports, or this is something that's consistently happening. Maybe we need to figure out how to moderate this. Being transparent, right? So we are currently working more on our trust and safety reports. I did a talk in November where I really broke down how we do moderation for digital misogynoir in particular, and I showed folks how we moderate, what different posts look like, giving them examples. So building out more opportunities for that type of education, staying mission aligned. That is very important to Blacksky. We were built with a purpose and we stick to that purpose, right? We do not veer from the actual model of self-governance. Like we try our hardest to make sure that everything that we do is rooted in how the community would benefit and also what the community actually needs, not what we think they need. doing the research, right? People may be good at their jobs on paper, but like, are you doing more reading? Are you talking to other folks in the field? Are you going to different conferences? Are you just talking to people who have maybe worked in these spaces in the past, right? And then listening to those that are most harmed and having the hard conversations. A lot of trust and safety spaces, a lot of communities, unfortunately, all fall victim to some type of internalized ism, even if they are part of a particular group. And it's really important to have those hard conversations, whether it's on the ground or online, about how do we protect ourselves, even from ourselves. So, if you want to, hop on and join Black Sky, here is the QR code. Here are some important links. And I will be quiet so you all can talk because I've been talking for a long time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. K. I am very inspired. Such important, incredible work. It's so cool to see and hear it. I mean, I have been following, I know Rudy and Marissa and Rishi now for a while, been following for a while, but it's so cool to hear from your perspective, really being that community leader on the ground, doing this work. It's awesome to hear your perspective. And yeah, I do have a question. I see there have been a couple of questions posted in chat. So let's build a stack and get chatting. I think Hema, you were uh
Most
first
of
in
them
the
were
stack.
answered by different folks within the community.
Cool.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I guess
also
Hema, if there was
expand
anything
on things
else.
too, because I think I see that Rudy dropped something as well that we've been working on with moderation that folks may not also talk about if people are interested about trending topics.
Cool. Looks like Hema has a thumbs up. What was Rudy's comment on trending topics?
Yeah, so we have like our own trending topics that are specific to what's happening on the Black Sky feed. And one of the things that we have noticed is that we have to also moderate trending topics because sometimes people will end up on the Summer Jam screen. They will be the main character of the day, and we do not want trending topics to become a space where people are being targeted, right? So, yes, a conversation is happening, right? But your name, like your actual government name, does not need to be in the trending topic. So, we have been working diligently to pay attention to what the trending topics are, to also see what people are talking about, to make sure that people are not doxxed and or put on blast in a way that would lead to more harm.
Cool. Yeah, I a question that came up for me was around like what you feel like or what you've seen, what types of conversations can happen because of the moderation system that you have. And I asked because I guess like I think about Blue Sky as kind of the Twitter, like public square type of environment, and contrasting that with more of like a which you mentioned though, like community organizing, groups coming together to like do work together. And I guess I imagine that moderation for those two separate contexts might look different. So curious, yeah, to hear you riff a little on maybe like what types of work have you seen been able to get done or conversations you've been able to facilitate and have because of this type of moderation.
Yeah, so I would also like just to clarify that Black Sky is not just like people organizing on the ground. It's people talking about shooting the shit. Like it's literally just a regular conversation. But what I will say is that in particular, our moderation service has allowed folks to vocalize how safe they feel and to also talk about things in a way that may not be talked about in other spaces. And as someone who's been on the internet since dial up, I can definitely attest to the fact that like there are a lot of conversations that are being had particularly around recently black femicide and around misogynoir, right? And it's very interesting to see that like when someone is being misogynistic, the community will report them. Like the reports are coming in. A prime example I have, and I know it's gonna be on wax, but I don't care because this person knows that I am at their neck. Talib Kweli. So Tyler Coghill has a long history of harming and harassing Black women online. It all started on Twitter. And he made an account. He tried to join, the Blacksky feed. And the amount of reports we got within that man making his account was astronomical to where we paused and was like, hey, we need to handle this. Of course, this particular celebrity got upset and said very inflammatory things and all types of things that were not true about Blacksky and Rudy and all those types of things. And basically like we can't prove that they've done this. But because they have a historical legacy of violence and people know that, the community wasted no time reporting them, and we wasted no time standing on business. This is what goes against our guidelines, right? And it also made us have a very deep conversation with internally, right? About how do we handle when someone who is a celebrity or a public figure tries to join Black Sky or join the Black Sky feed, and they have a history of harming Black people on the internet in particularly, right? How do we proactively protect folks? And the conversation was kind of spicy, but I think that we all agreed that our job as moderators and as people who are stewarding this community is to listen to what they're saying. If hundreds and hundreds of reports are coming in about a person who has documented, I mean, articles, podcasts, interviews of them doing this, yeah, sorry, you can't engage with the feed. So you have you have the misogynoir label on your page. You are, what we call banned from TV. Like we have to protect our people. And I think that that is a lot of the conversations that happen online is that they know that we are listening and paying attention, and that we also realize that um, people have the opportunity to appeal, of course, but we still have to do a full investigation of the reports that are coming in. So I would say that our community space, which may be very different for what maybe you're seeing on like Blue Sky, is that they are very active in conversations about how things impact Black folks, and they are very quick to make sure that if harm is happening, that it is openly talked about and reported. And it's been very interesting to see that happen because I don't like I see things, but I don't see everything. So it's always interesting when we have our trust and safety meetings or when JD and I have our meetings and we talk about what's going on with moderation and they're letting me know like, oh, this was happening and this is what the reports look like. So I think that is how the conversations are changing. Yeah. So hopefully that answered.
Yeah, great. And Rudy, I saw your answer as well in chat. Thank you for that. Pakon, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. K. This is like kind of like stewing in it's just a lot of yeah, a lot to think about. I'm really curious about this question is about internalized racism in this label, and I feel that's really like it's like a tough one because it's like it's like body it's like horror. It's like body horror, collective body horror where like the self is like distorted and it's like or like the call is coming from inside the house like this horror metaphor is really in my head and I'm just like it feels like it's such a sensitive way and I'm kind of curious and also in some ways like it's like uh, Black people have like been living in this a certain dilemma for centuries where they're surrounded by a counter reality of white supremacy and trying to maintain social cohesion around an understanding of reality that where an outside force is not serving your sense of orientation about who you are and like and is perverting thoughts, you know, and it's kind of not unlike what we're all experiencing now with like democracy and LLMs and like AI psychosis. Like this is like there's this kind of new player that's entered the chat and does not share our reality and is like distorting us in ways and we like have to figure out how do our systems work because we can't be like you're not a human like you're just someone who has been affected by this distorting force so I just feel yeah so I'm curious like yeah around internalized racism and its label like it feels really related to like the issues that we're collectively facing in humanity. I'm curious if the processes around it are different in the same way that the processes maybe of seeking justice within society are different than the justice we seek within our homes. Um, yeah, like the process around that label. And like, I'm just curious.
Do you mean the process of why we created a label or the process of how we choose to enforce it?
How how do you use it and how do you define what it is and how do you
Oh yeah, well
yeah,
there's
just the
plenty of
politics of that label.
yeah, so
Um,
like internalized anti-blackness is not something that's like new. Like there's so much research
Hmm.
and so many scholars and activists and organizers have written about it for a very long time. So that particular label was low-key light work because it's something that's constantly talked
Hmm.
about within the Black community, right? Internalized anti-Blackness in particular, especially as it pertains to the online space, is not something that is new, right?
Hmm.
It is something that is being talked about, I would say, more often in mixed company, right? But I will say that as it pertains to us creating the definition of that label, we definitely, look at the work of others in these organizing spaces. We are Black as well, so we understand like the terminology around internalized racism, which I think is also very important into how we define these labels, is that the people who actually experience that harm are defining them. As far as enforcing it, because internalized anti-Blackness is very like apparent, right? Um, it is not a very difficult thing to label, right? So when we think about internalized anti-blackness, we're thinking about colorism, texturism, right? We're thinking about Islamophobia, classism, right? The talented 10th, right? We're thinking about all of these things. And these are things that are very common knowledge in a nuance within the community. So when it comes to how the moderators moderate, no matter if they live here or they live in the Netherlands, internalized anti-blackness exists in all of these spaces. So I think that for our particular community, it has been very, I would say, affirming to be able to actually call a thing in a way that is not concrete, right? Because conversations can expand, people can appeal, so on and so forth, but it allows us to call a thing, which has been the issue with moderation as it pertains to Black people since the invent of the internet. So hopefully that
Hmm.
answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you. I think there's just a lot of wisdom that that you guys have about the dilemmas we're all facing now. So thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again for all this. Is super helpful and like yeah, a lot of incubating around what it means to actually create and enforce safe spaces, which is something that is really rarely done, and especially online. Feels like people are kind of like, ah, it's just online, like it's just an unsafe space. Um, and so I really appreciate this. I think the thing that's coming up for me right now is a situation that happened recently in a group I'm in where there was a lot of kind of like social media slamming of one person being like, you're anti indigenous because you have not included my thing in the process. But like the reason was in part because they were being damaging in other ways. But I'm wondering what you do when there's like two people on two sides of a problem and they're like asking for moderation jointly. And does that become a thing where you have to become a judgment force, or is it just like what we have online? So I'm just wondering what happens when you're kind of there's two people saying two different things in the context of one of these moderation situations.
Yeah, so when someone submits a moderation report, like when someone reports something, it goes to Acorn and we can go in and moderate it. We have a list of policies and labels that are open to the community to see. They're on the moderation page as well. And those are where we begin, right? So we also look at context a lot. So if someone is having an argument with someone, that is not rooted in anti-blackness or white supremacy, then that is out of scope, right? But if there is a conversation happening where someone is targeting someone and it aligns with that particular label, right? The labels that we have, we will apply the label. If it calls for a larger conversation, we do wait. We have internal communication with our moderators. We have internal communications with our trust and safety teams. And if it's a tricky case that really needs to have a bit more time, we will save it for the trust and safety team meeting where we can actually unpack it and talk about it. But I will say that, and I've talked about this with other groups, is that we don't seek, like, we don't go online to see if people are arguing, anticipating that they're going to report to decide which side is wrong and right. I don't think that's necessarily our role, and I think that is surveillance, right? In my opinion, I know some people might think like, no, that's like community management. In my mind, that's surveillance, right? If you are feeling a particular way, you should report it. If I see something that is misogynistic, I can report it, right? Anyone can report it. Once the reports come to the moderation team, there is like a standards of procedure. There is a process, right? We do have policies. Policies change, right? But we go by those policies and those definitions of those labels in order to label these particular things. And like I said, if it's just like a very like immature argument between two people, that is literally out of scope, right? Then we, for us internally, will say this is out of scope. If it's something that we see an uptick of happening over and over again, that's where we start to imagine and ideate on new labels like fat phobia and ableism, right? That's how the new labels are created. So hopefully that is helpful. And one of the things that I talked about when I was at Atmosphere Conference in Vancouver is that you have to constantly be flexible and willing to change the labels, add to the policies, because there's not one size fit all form of moderation. And I think that that also is important when we're dealing with like infighting or dealing with people, trying to mass report each other or do camp smear campaigns, right? Like we have to pay attention to the cultural context, what is happening in the world, how things are evolving, what new words are being used to create tension or harm to people, right? We have to be abreast on that, and that's when we add those new labels.
Thank you.
Any other folks with questions want to jump in?
I see Lee put a comment about how we use people's assembly to feed into labels and things. Yeah, so the only like thing that came through People's Assembly with labels and particularly at this current juncture is when I introduced the new labels to get votes on them. The community has the opportunity to always submit to the People's Assembly to request new labels. Um, we haven't gotten any requests as of yet, but I am always encouraging community members to use People Assembly to suggest labels, features, things that they would like to see, things that they would like to see change. So we haven't had anything in particular where someone was like, hey, this label should exist, right? We've had maybe some chatter on the feeds, maybe some chatters amongst folks about like why we use one particular label rather than a different type of label. And then me being in my particular role, I try to write blog posts, anything educational to explain like this, like an example, misogynoir covers all of misogynoir, right? We don't need a particular label that says trans misogynoir because trans women are Black women, right? So if someone's being transphobic, right, and they are being transphobic towards a Black woman, right, who is of the trans experience, that is misogynoir across the board. There's no misogynoir light, there's no misogynoir junior. So I think that if folks want more labels, they definitely have access to being able to submit those or have conversations. But we do a lot of research. Like we pay attention to a lot of things. We do a lot of reading. We have very like in-depth conversations about what's happening, not only in our particular community on Blacksky, but also to Black folks at large, to be able to like be tapped in, to be able to move and shake as needed, and to be able to protect to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I had a question about I guess like the moderation team, and it sounds like it's um like distributed, small, but I want a sense for like who like how many there are, and then also um like is there like a built-in kind of system for managing people's like time and capacity and like you were saying emotional and like emotional capacity for this work. like, and also like whether it's like compensation or reputation and like ability to move and have access. Oh, we'll start you off with like doing this type of moderation and then eventually you graduate to this type of moderation. Like what are kind of the roles of the moderation team um and who are they and how many?
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you how many moderators we have for their privacy. We don't release that information, but what I will say is that all of the moderation is volunteer based except for the core team members. And it is volunteer based because we don't want to force anybody to subject themselves to things that they don't want to be subjected to. With our volunteer moderators, which are separate from our peer moderators, most of them have been moderating for a year plus, and they moderate at their own leisure, which allows them to be able to take breaks. We've had plenty of moderators who, maybe did not have capacity, whether it was due to moderation or just life, right? And I think that that is important because um, this is not a like full-time W-2 job for them. And I also think that that is important for us to keep in mind. Um, I also will say that we do pay our internal volunteer mods, right? So we have our internal volunteer mods that do get paid, and they get paid based on how much they moderate a month, and it's a very low number. And if they don't moderate at all that month, that's perfectly fine. They don't send an invoice. And that's been really helpful for folks who may have other obligations, full-time jobs, may have like, issues with their internet, or, maybe they're going on vacation all summer and they're like, I don't even want to open any type of anything, right? So it gives them that flexibility. I also want to let folks know that for the peer mods, the peer moderation is volunteers that are within the community and they do not get paid. So very similar to when we think about like the peer moderators on Reddit. Not the main moderators, right? Because the main moderators on Reddit do get paid, but the peer moderators are just community members who want to contribute in a way to help keep the subreddits that they're a part of safe. And we do this we're launching this peer moderation system, particularly for Blacksky only posts, is to avoid the widespread use of AI. We presented it to the People's Assembly about like how they felt about the Blacksky only post. These are the different options that we have. Like these are the things that we may have to do. And the peer moderation option was something that people were really interested in. Like they were really like, we should have peer moderators. Like I would sign up to be a peer moderator. And it allows us to increase the capacity to be able to moderate, especially when we roll out Blacksky only posts, which we are already suspecting will be a big draw for folks and also will be used more than probably regular posting because of the amount of conversations I see online about white people coming into the conversations of Black folks for no reason. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. Ian, maybe since you haven't asked the question yet, and then Pekan.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. K, for all this. I was curious if you could talk a little more about some of the maybe kind of like the community care practices among the moderators themselves, like any kind of reparative or restorative things. I'm a social worker as my background, so I did a lot of workplace mental health. I was an EAP counselor for a while before starting my PhD. But I also know, like, say in data workers and data labelers, like often and content moderators for like big tech, right? Like the mental health effects and the kind of vicarious trauma of what people are exposed to and doing the work is also part of the work. And so I'm curious how you discuss that as a team.
Yeah, so we have really been talking internally and putting things into place, particularly in Acorn, about how do we like gently manage how much people are moderating, because we know that um, people sometimes don't realize the amount of harm they're experiencing when they get into a groove, into a mode. That's why doom scrolling exists, right? So we have literally built in, right, like you choose a time, you choose the amount, and you can see like a bar across the top of how much time you can exit whenever you want to. I also think another thing that we have been talking about internally is what type of resources can we provide? So I used to work for a large survivor justice organization, and we had something where we had a resource for folks who had experienced sexual violence. It was free. They could log in and they could do different like somatic activities, journals, and things like that. So we have been discussing internally of what types of resources we can create that are Blacksky specific that can be accessed through Acorn, so you have access to them through them in real time. To help with that. I also think that when it comes to moderation, because like I watched a lot of documentaries on like the exploitative labor of moderators in the Philippines. I've watched like a horror movie on moderation. That just came out recently. If you haven't seen it, I can't remember the name, but it was very interesting. Um, and one of the things that I think we will be implementing over time is how do we collaborate with mental health professionals, different organizations like Therapy for Black Girls and things like that to provide discounted services for folks that are doing moderation. So there are a lot of organizations like the Leveling Foundation and things like that will provide like vouchers for therapy for folks who experience sexual violence. And they collaborate with different types of nonprofits and companies. So that is something that I have been thinking deeply about and just trying to figure out ways in which we can collaborate with these different organizations that can provide these services for a discount rate or free if they want to. So that way, moderators have access to things to help them when they are experiencing different types of distresses from moderating.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we have 1 minute left. I see there are perhaps a couple other questions, so maybe we can follow up with you after Dr. K. I'll email you and send you if there's questions that folks still have. I know Rudy, Marissa, and Rishi are in the Metagov Slack. I can make sure, Dr. K, if you want to be in there, that you can. We often do follow up and kind of keep conversations going in the thread in the Metagov seminar channel. But yeah, and then we can hopefully get the rest of these questions answered later. But thank you so much. We'll close it out now. And if you all can unmute, we can give our speaker a round of applause as we always do. 3, 2, 1, go.
Woo!
Thank you very much.
Woo!
Woo.
I,
Thank you very much, Dr. K, for coming, and Black Sky team. Y'all are doing just incredible work. And thanks for everyone for joining, for your questions, and have a beautiful rest of your days.
You too. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, FK.